Welcome everybody. This is week 2, Project Ichor. This is a little bit later than I thought it would be, but life happens. This is sample A, and we begin today with some snail poop. I don't know quite why I focused on this particular thing. I guess because I thought it was funny. It's a weird sense of humor I have, I suppose. There's actually a lot of snail poop in this sample, if I remember correctly. I put quite a lot of bladder snails. Actually, I put very little bladder snails that became quite a lot of bladder snails in the aquarium. So, naturally, the substrate is going to become full of these little turdlets. An interesting thing that happened in this video is that I was actually pretty confident that I was able to identify a mystery organism. At least I think so, anyways. I'm still not completely sure, and it's very difficult to identify some of these organisms, especially if you haven't had years of experience doing it or are a professional or both. As always, I find myself enamored with organisms like the mystery organism from Ichor 1. I think this is perhaps the same kind of organism. I'm not sure. I still think that it could be an insect larva. And if you'd like to know more about this organism, you can click the link. But it's got a really cool intestinal tract. It sort of undulates, which is a 50-cent word that means it moves in a wave. I suppose I could use a different word, but I guess that's the proper word, so I'm going to stick with it. I had to do a lot of editing in this video as well because I found myself looking at this organism too much. I don't know why, but I just can't get enough of it. Perhaps that's some sort of a god complex, and I just want to see the inferior organisms in their world. But this organism is not a hunter. It just feeds on the substrate below. I mean, I've never seen it eat anything else, and the mouth parts certainly don't look like it would work that way. I mean, also its intestinal tract is full of algae and scum. Now, anybody who's taken a parasitology class or a simple zoology class is probably aware of the number of parasites that could be in our food at any given time, especially if we eat things like sushi, which is uncooked, or if we want to leave our meat a little bit pink in the middle, or things like that. There's quite a lot of organisms that can survive that process. It's actually a little bit unnerving, personally, which I think brings me to the morbid curiosity that I have with some of these organisms. I become intimately aware of how full our lakes and streams and rivers are. So you don't want to go out and make a habit of eating things without washing it or taking care of it by cooking it or washing it or sanitizing it in some way. Maybe even steaming it. Because then you'll get organisms like these. Once again, this is sample A, and we'll be transitioning over to the next sample. I didn't find a whole lot that was interesting in this sample, so that's probably why, except for that little creature right there, which I believe is a rotifer. So this is still sample A, but we've transitioned over to, oh, what's that? I believe that is perhaps a nematode, actually. Some sort of aquatic nematode. It could be a very, very, very first stage of the mystery organism that you will see soon. But I had to edit a lot of this video out because there just wasn't enough interesting things to talk about. And I don't want to be babbling on about non-related things. So if you want to see more interesting things, then I have to edit it for you. So that was an interesting thing that I saw under the microscope. Those rotifers, which I don't know, I don't think they're the same type as the ones I mentioned in the first video, and the nematode looking creature, they're all very similar looking, and anybody who's had to take a lab practical in school knows that it can be difficult to identify all the key features, especially when they're still alive and moving. But I believe at this point we will be transitioning to the next sample. But before that, you have these interesting little rotifers and other organisms. So, sample B. Sample B starts off in what appears to be red material of some kind. Now, this sample is interesting because it is full of the chitin, or the exoskeleton of the shrimp, the glass shrimp that I had put in the aquarium from a couple of weeks ago, and it died. And I believe it died because the waste was too much and it was just not hospitable for it. Part of this aquarium's pros and cons is that it's just not filtered, which is a boon if you want to keep all the organisms in a natural habitat of a stagnant pond, but it's not so good if you're shrimp and you need that extra circulation and you need the oxygen to be much better than it is. So you'll be seeing a lot of organisms weave in and out of the husk that was the glass shrimp. There were two of them and they both died. Um, this sample has a lot of uh, the tail end, because I thought I would find the eggs, and indeed I do find some eggs in these samples, but not a whole lot. Um, it looks like the worm, whatever it is, certainly enjoys being. It's probably eating a lot of the shrimp meat. It's like lobster for it, I suppose. And you'll always see organic matter when it dies. It's really, really quickly absorbed, honestly. Oh, look at this little guy. Look at that Ostracod. He's almost saying hi to us. So if you want to learn about Ostracods, please click that link. Yeah, so Ostracods are interesting. I'm seeing more and more of these green Ostracods, and I don't know exactly why. If anybody knows why, please tell me, because I really enjoy these creatures. And I find that the green shells are not always there, so I'm wondering why they are at all. It's about here that we see the mystery organism for this video, and it looks very much different from the organism from last time, but it's still something like a worm, and I believe I figured it out. So if you want to see more footage of this creature, please see the link in the right. But I couldn't pass up some additional footage, of course. So we will be transitioning to the next sample in a few minutes. But this particular worm was interesting because it had larger setae, which are the hairs that it uses to sense its surroundings, and it had a little proboscis nose. It was very cool. Later on, I came across this little ostracod here. Um, one of the only other organisms that you're really going to see, probably. I thought that might have been a worm, but I guess it was not. It's always cool to see these guys tunneling through the muck. They always remind me, like, they kind of remind me of sort of like microscopic farm animals, kind of, because they're herbivorous, um, and they're also detrivores, but they kind of focus on just living their life and eating algae, and they're kind of oblong, kind of like cows are. So I guess that's kind of the analogy. This video series is in its infancy, so I'm still trying to nail down how exactly to go about it, but weekly or mostly weekly shows seem to work out, maybe bi-weekly or bi-monthly. Depends on what's on my plate. Speaking of things that are on my plate, this is the time when I decide enough is enough. I'm going to isolate this interesting organism from my microscope. Again, I must apologize. I do not have the adequate equipment to be going around. Oh, that might have been a shrimp egg, but I'm not quite sure. It was very difficult to see inside them. They were very opaque. And of course, the toothpick is a somewhat crude instrument to utilize. I think I might have damaged some of my specimens this way, but I'm getting better at it. But it's at this point where we transition to the mystery organism sample E, which is we skipped a few letters because I had several other samples that I had ordered, but they didn't really have very much to it. So, Fracadus, I believe, is this organism. And there's extra footage just for you if you click the link. So this organism is different from the previous organism for two main reasons. The first one being the hairs that it has, setae is what they're called. These hairs have, they're very much longer. With the second reason being they have this weird proboscis nose. Anyways, I came across this, I believe I've injured this organism here. Sorry about that. But because it's injured, it's not moving, which makes it a much easier target for my microscope. So it has a digestive tract, and it's certainly undulating like the last one, which I believe is also in this video. The first worm is not like this. It's got these weird dots, which I thought were odd. They might be parasites or something. I'm not quite sure. Or they could be the places where the hairs attach. I really don't know. But their gut is sort of filled with the same material that we see around them, this sort of detritus and algae and things like that. I believe we're looking at the tail end of this organism as it undulates from one side to the other, but I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Like I said, I'm more confident about the identification for D. fricardus like this because its features are a little bit more unique. I think this is a molt, perhaps, or maybe just a dead organism. But here we can see that the hairs are much longer. The gut or the intestinal tract looks a lot different. It's kind of got a funnel, if you can see, or maybe that's a heart, I don't know. But it has a long, sort of a spiral, maybe esophagus, and then it funnels into the stomach, which funnels into what I assume to be the intestines. But this organism is freshwater, and it seemed to match all of the identification characteristics of the Darrow genus. So perhaps I'm correct, but perhaps I'm not. And it's very important to be humble about this sort of thing. When it comes to identifying organisms, it's okay to say, I don't know. But lastly here, I'm going to allow a slow sort of look into the organism, so anybody who wants to take their hand at IDing it can do so. Again, it's fresh water. The organism is rather small, but you can definitely see it without any magnification. I certainly could see it on my slide. It is somewhat translucent, It appears to be eating detritus. It has very long setae, and it's got a little proboscis nose. So anybody who wants to take a crack at it, feel free. But as always, on the end of the videos, I'd like to thank everybody who comes to see my videos and learn a little bit and find them a little bit entertaining. Soon enough, I'll come out with another video, and hopefully you'll like that one too. See you later.